Hi guys. So today we're going to talk about cones. Now, cones are a little bit different from prisms because, well, obviously for prisms you have two bases, whereas a cone you only have one. So we still start off by finding my lateral area. The only difference is instead of having just perimeter times height, we have to take into account that we don't have two bases. And so simply we put a 1/2 in front of that. Now, we're going to break it down because for a cone, there's only one cone. It's always going to be consist of a triangular top or bottom, and then the base is always going to be a circle. So instead of writing 1/2 p perimeter times height, we have to adjust some things. Okay, and so let's break it down and see how that works out. So the P still represents the perimeter of the base, which in this case the perimeter is a circle. And so we think about it, the perimeter of a circle is just the circumference. And so we're going to start with that. So we have lateral area is 1/2 the circumference, and circumference is 2 pi the radius. So that's what I'm going to put in for perimeter, 2 pi the radius. Now, another thing we have to be careful here. I know here we have h for height of the prism, but once again, because we don't have two bases, we're not going to consider the height. We have to be considered of how or what we consider the height. Now in this case, this right here is what we call the slant height, and this is actually what we're going to use to calculate the lateral area of the entire prism. Later, we're going to actually use this height to help us find volume. But for right now, I wouldn't say we don't need it, but we're not going to use that particular height. Now, that particular height might be in handy to find my slant height, which is what I need later on. So from now on, whenever I'm finding cones as far as lateral area and surface area, instead of saying height, I'm going to call it slant height. And so instead of putting h, I'm going to put L. And so here we can simplify two things. So if you notice, the 1/2 is going to cancel the 2. And so I get this formula that I'm going to use every single time whenever I'm looking for lateral area. And that is simply just pi times the radius times my slant height. And so this formula, my lateral area, is the one I'm going to be using every single time. And so if you remember, for surface area is simply my lateral area plus, it would be two bases, but in this case I only have one base. And so the area of my base, well, we said the base is a circle, and so area of a circle is simply pi r squared. And so my surface area, if I substitute everything back in, I'm going to get my surface area to be pi radius slant height, which gives me my lateral area, plus the area of the base, and area of the base is simply pi radius squared. And so here I have my two formulas that I'm going to be using every single time. I got my lateral area and I got my surface area. So now let's go ahead and practice some of these problems. So here's the first one. So the first problem is asking me find the lateral and surface area of the cones below. So remember, lateral area is just pi the radius times my slant height. So here, all I gotta do is, my radius is 7, my slant height is 11.4. So now all I have to do is substitute those values in and get my answer. So pi is gonna stay as pi for right now. I'm going to put parentheses around my radius, so 7, and then my slant height was 11.4. So there's two ways I can write my answer. In exact form, we're going to leave pi in the answer. So in other words, when you calculate your answer, all you're doing is putting the 7 times 11.4 in the calculator. And so when we do that, we get 79.8 pi, and then you have to include my units, and we're still talking about area, so my units are going to be meters squared. if you want to include pi in your answer, you simply just multiply that by pi. So we can say lateral area is also roughly 250.7 meters squared. So here are my two answers. One, notice, has pi as part of my answer, which is what we call the exact answer. And the other one, there is no pi. And so that's what we call a rounded answer. So the second thing we got to find is my total surface area, or just surface area. And remember, surface area is just my lateral area, which I found to be one of those two, and then plus area of the base. So area of the base, remember, is just pi radius squared, which in this case I know radius is 7. And so I'm going to do it with pi, so find the exact answer. So I had 79.8 pi for my lateral area, and the base is going to be, well, let's work on the base down here. If the radius is 7 squared is 49, so my area of the base is 49 pi, and so that's what I'm going to put here. So 49 pi, and so my surface area, or my exact surface area, would be 128.8 pi meters squared. And once again, if you want to do if you want to include pi in the calculator, you simply multiply by pi, and I get an answer of 404.637 meters squared. Alright, so let's take a look at another problem. This problem is slightly different in a way that we have to find the slant height first. And so we're still going to start by finding my lateral area, where lateral area is just simply pi radius slant height. So even though we don't have the radius, we can find the radius because they're giving us a diameter. The radius is simply half of the diameter, so half of 9 is 4.5. And this other thing they gave us is this as 20, and so what we have to find is this diagonal here. And if you notice, when we outline it, we have a right triangle with this side being 20 and the top being 4.5. And so I'm going to redraw that triangle down here. So this is exactly what I'm looking at, where this is 4.5 and this is 20. And now remember, across your 90-degree angle is always going to be your hypotenuse, or your C. And so here I'm going to have to use Pythagorean theorem to find that C value. And so to find C, which is what we're calling the slant height, is going to be equal to the square root of 4.5 squared plus 20 squared. Put that in the calculator, and we're looking at the square root of 420.25, or simply 20.5. And so that is going to be my slant height. So my slant height here is going to be 20.5. Okay. And so now we can go back and actually finish my problem. So my lateral area, we said it was pi radius, which we found to be 4.5, and slant height, which we just found to be 20.5 or 20.5. And once again, we can put this answer in two ways: the exact form, which has pi as part of your answer, and so we simply multiply 4.5 times 20.5 in the calculator, and we get 92.25 pi millimeters squared. Or if you want to include pi in your answer, we get an estimate of 289.812 millimeters squared. Which brings us to the last part of finding the total surface area. And remember, surface area is just lateral area plus area of the base. And so let's talk about area of the base. So area of the base is simply pi radius square, which we said the radius is 4.5. So we have pi 4.5 squared, or area of the base is simply 20.25 pi, and then meter squared. And so all we gotta do is put everything back in here. So I'm gonna do it both ways, using pi and then pi included. So my surface area is 92.25 pi plus area of the base, which was 20.25 pi, to give me a surface area of 112.5 pi. Or if you want to include pi in your answer, simply multiply by pi and we get 353.429. Can't forget units, sorry. And those are my two answers.